Hey everyone, this is TH Stories 80, where we narrate fanfiction audiobooks. Now we begin chapter 25 of An Extraordinary Journey. A week later, 0445 hours, Willow found herself walking through snow toward a bright light just beyond an icy cliff. She felt an odd sense of calm as she neared the edge when she noticed a recessed section of ice to the left, a few yards away. There was a pull toward it, subtle but unmistakable. Nearing the cliff's edge, her mouth fell open in surprise at the sight before her. A great city of towers. It was the same city from her visions when she had been connected to O'Neill. Only now the name surfaced clearly in her mind. Atlantis, Willow whispered to herself. The pull from the recessed section of ice grew stronger. Willow turned and walked toward it, though her eyes remained fixed on the distant city. She could see several ships flying toward it, but they were too far away to make out any details. If not for those ships, she might have thought the city completely empty, as she could see no movement from her vantage point. When she reached the recessed section, a pillar-like structure suddenly rose from the ground. Willow stepped back in surprise. It was cream-colored, with glowing blue accents running along its sides. After a moment's hesitation, she cautiously stepped forward again and looked down. At the top of the short pillar was a plain silver plate with the outline of a hand. "What's a hand scanner doing all the way out here?" she murmured. She reached out and placed her hand on the scanner. There was a flash of green light, and before she could react, a set of rings shot up around her from the ice. Before she had time to take a breath, the rings transported her to a place somewhere else where it was pitch black. It took several moments for her eyes to adjust before she dared move. She didn't want to risk slipping on the ice in Antarctica. That would be simply embarrassing. Once her feet stepped off the transport pad, the lights flickered on automatically, as if the place itself sensed her presence. She looked around. She was in a medium-sized room, sparse and utilitarian, furnished only with a bed and light fixtures that resembled LED panels. Searching for a way out, she ran her hands along the walls. By accident, she triggered a door. Willow stepped into the corridor beyond and froze. She was in the chair room they'd discovered in Antarctica. Large windows looked out into the night. There was far more equipment now, suggesting active use. People had been here. Maybe still were. "This must be the ancient outpost," Willow whispered. "But it looks different. More open. More active." She could make out passageways branching into other rooms, but one section drew her in. It was a hallway with a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking one of Atlantis's pier-like structures. As she walked toward it, the ground suddenly trembled beneath her feet. The walls shuddered. She hurried to the window, fighting to keep her balance just as the great city began to rise from the ice. "Whoa," Willow breathed. "A flying city?" But all the legends say Atlantis sank beneath the sea, not that it flew out of the ground. The shaking intensified as the city slowly lifted into the air. Beneath it, blue-hued engines ignited, unleashing a burst of power that sent a massive wall of ice and snow sweeping across the land, engulfing the outposts in every direction. In an instant, Willow found herself back on the icy cliff. Disoriented, she looked around, then spotted Atlantis, ascending higher and higher into the sky, its engines blazing blue until they vanished into space. Once the city was beyond sight, she heard a distant ringing. It grew louder and louder, echoing from nowhere, until she opened her eyes. She was awake. Willow's apartment. "The same dream again," Willow whispered to herself, rubbing her temples as her cell phone rang on the bedside table. She reached out and picked it up. Glancing at the caller ID, it was Daniel. She flipped the phone open. Willow rubbed her left eye and said, "Hey, Daniel." "Willow, I think we'll finally be going to the outpost," Daniel said excitedly. "Can you meet me in my lab?" "Sure," Willow replied, trying to stifle a yawn. "Were you asleep?" Daniel asked in a sheepish tone, as if realizing he may have called at the wrong time. "No." Willow groaned in what she hoped sounded sarcastic, glancing at her alarm clock. It's only 5 in the morning, Daniel. Why would I be asleep? Yeah, well, sorry, he murmured, sounding even more sheepish. So, can you make it out here now? Yeah, Daniel, Willow sighed. Her voice carried her exhaustion as she ran a hand through her hair. Give me a few minutes to shower and change. I'll see you at the mountain in an hour or so. Are you all right? Daniel asked. Yeah, no, Willow said, shaking her head. I don't know. She paused before adding, I've just been having a strange dream for the past couple of days. Wanna talk about it when you get to base? Daniel asked. Yeah, sure. I'll see you soon, Willow replied. She slowly swung her legs over the side of the bed and sat there for a few minutes. With a headache pulsing behind her eyes, she considered taking some aspirin before heading to the shower and putting on a fresh set of clothes. After getting ready, she walked out of her apartment. She decided to take her Jetta this time since the weather was so chilly. Striding across the lot, Willow thought, guess the weather report was right for once. Looks like that massive cold front they were talking about is coming in today. As she approached her car, she could see her breath condense in the air with every exhale. Daniel's lab, SGC. Morning, Daniel. Here's your coffee, said Willow to the archaeologist, who was already rushing around his lab, packing books and other objects. What are you doing? Morning, Willow, Daniel replied excitedly as he grabbed the coffee from her. Getting ready for the trip to the outpost. You should get packing. Yeah, Willow grimaced. It's not happening today. Huh? Daniel looked surprised. How do you know? Did Dr. Weir tell you anything? No, but I did meet her on the way here, Willow said. I came in at the same time as her, and I asked her about the situation with the outpost. And? Daniel asked, motioning for Willow to continue. And she didn't say anything, said Willow as she sat down on a chair on the other side of his desk. But I did sense a feeling of apprehension and regret. That doesn't mean anything, Willow, said Daniel, waving his arms animatedly. You just don't want to go. Well, not really, but only because I've been there every night in my astral form, said Willow. Oh, and no change with the Colonel last night either. Willow was about to explain her Atlantis dream to Daniel, but before she could, Dr. Weir stepped into the lab. Good morning, Dr. Jackson, Lieutenant. Dr. Weir nodded. What are you doing? She asked, looking at the cases and backpacks on Daniel's table. Oh, just getting ready to go to the Antarctic outpost, said Daniel. Sorry, Dr. Jackson, Weir grimaced at the now deflated archaeologist. They're still not done preparing the site for full operation. I've been told it'll take a week before they're fully ready. Weir apologized again before nodding to both of them and stepping out. She had to leave for a briefing with SG-12, but promised Daniel he would be able to set out for the outpost in a week. After Weir left, Willow turned toward Daniel with a grin and gave him an I told you so look. Not one word, Daniel said as he began unpacking his backpacks and cases. Hey, I did try to warn you, Willow smiled. So, while I unpack all the stuff, want to tell me about your dream? Asked Daniel. Oh, and before you start, you think you can use your, you know, my what, Daniel? Asked Willow. You know, he said, waving his hands around his head. No, I don't know, Willow replied, arcing an eyebrow. Leaning closer, Daniel whispered, Your telekinesis, before stepping back and motioning at his cases and bags, then at the empty shelf spaces. He whined, Come on, help me out here. Nope, Willow chuckled. You woke me up at 5 in the morning. An ungodly hour. Just for that, I require tribute. I'll get you something at the mess hall, said Daniel. Oh, come on, Willow replied. That stuff is free. Then what do you want? Asked Daniel nervously. You're treating us to lunch today, said Willow, rubbing her hands in glee. From anywhere in the city. Fine, Daniel gave in. Now, if you please, just tell me where you want these, said Willow, using her telekinesis to lift multiple books, charts, and papers at once as Daniel showed her where they belonged on the shelves. As she was putting away the last of Daniel's things, Major Carter and Teal'c walked into the room. Good morning, Daniel Jackson, Willow Rosenberg, said Teal'c as Major Carter gave a wave. Good morning, Willow and Daniel said together. Guess what, guys? Daniel's treating us to lunch today, said Willow, smiling. Really? Carter raised an eyebrow. Anywhere? Anywhere, said Willow. There is a new restaurant near O'Malley's, is there not? Asked Tilk. Yeah, you're right, Tilk, said Major Carter, smiling. All right, we'll go there. What brought on this sudden generosity, Daniel? It's payment for Willow helping me move all my stuff back where it belongs, said Daniel. Anyway, shall we go for breakfast? Yep, replied Carter. Let's go, guys. We have a briefing in 3 hours. Briefing room, SGC. Willow was listening closely to the arguments being made for and against Carter's latest proposal to use the Teltac previously modified by O'Neill before the Battle of Antarctica to contact the Asgard. However, since that ship was the most advanced piece of equipment they had, the Pentagon had decided to deny its use. So, Dr. Weir asked Carter to come up with a new plan to contact the Asgard. How about Samaria? Willow asked softly. What about Samaria? Dr. Weir replied. Since Samaria is an Asgard protected planet, wouldn't that mean they're monitoring it? Willow said. Besides, isn't there supposed to be an Asgard teacher there? Maybe he would know how to help contact Thor. That's a good idea, said Dr. Weir. Lieutenant Rosenberg and Dr. Jackson will go to Samaria and ask the Asgard teacher there to try contacting Thor. Willow and Daniel nodded. And in the meantime, Dr. Weir continued, looking at Carter. Maybe Major Carter can see what else we can do from this end. Carter simply nodded in agreement. Samaria, 4 hours later. The Stargate on the planet called Samaria whooshed open with its characteristic unstable vortex before Willow and Daniel walked through the event horizon. As they looked around at the pathway leading to the nearby village, the Stargate behind them shut down. All right, Willow, let's go find Garwin, said Daniel as he started walking, with Willow beside him. Hopefully the Asgard teacher, Hermod, knows where Thor is. You haven't been here since SG-1 was last here? Asked Willow. Well, SG-1 hasn't, Daniel replied, but other teams do come by on occasion to check up on them. How much longer to the village? Willow asked. About a 10-minute walk from here, Daniel replied. As they walked along the path, Willow and Daniel noticed a woman approaching them. Daniel, is that Garwin? Willow asked. Yep, he confirmed. Hello, Garwin, said Daniel as he approached the woman. Willow quickly glanced at her and noticed she was wearing a dark-colored cloak and carried a sword strapped across her back. Hello, Daniel, said Garwin. We noticed the portal activate, so I was selected to come meet the SG team. I'm surprised that it was you and your friend who came, she added, looking at Willow. Ah, Garwin of Samaria, please meet Lieutenant Rosenberg of the Tauri, said Daniel, introducing the two women. Nice to meet you, Garwin, said Willow, inclining her head slightly. I've heard a lot about you and your people from Daniel. 'Tis good to meet you as well. Will you not come and eat with us before you start your mission? Garwin asked. Sorry, Garwin, said Daniel. We actually have an urgent request for Hermod, and time is of the essence. Very well, said Garwin. Please follow me. Hermod is educating our young ones today. It is only a short walk from here. Willow and Daniel followed her. After a brisk walk, during which Garwin caught up with Daniel, they reached a structure with a color scheme and angular design that was clearly of Asgard origin. It was surrounded by trees, with a clearing to the side that held what looked like play equipment for children. Taking a closer look, Willow noticed that the equipment was of Earth design, donated by the SGC for the children of Samaria to enjoy. Willow smiled to herself, recalling Major Carter mentioning that they had done the same for the people of Eudora after Colonel O'Neill had been stranded there for 100 days. The SGC had helped rebuild Lyra's village and had also donated playground items for the children there. As she was thinking this, she didn't notice Daniel and a grey alien come to stand beside her. She turned, surprised, as Daniel tapped her on the shoulder to introduce her to Hermod. Oh, said Willow as she turned around. Daniel, you scared me. Sorry about that, Daniel said. I wanted to introduce you to someone. He motioned to Hermod. Hermod of the Asgard, please meet Lieutenant Willow Rosenberg of the Tauri. Hello, Hermod, said Willow as she crouched slightly and shook the tiny hand of the Asgard. It's nice to meet you. And please, call me Willow. Very well, Willow, said Hermod. As I was telling Dr. Jackson, Please state your case so that I may return to my work. Daniel hasn't told you? Willow asked, looking at Daniel. No, Daniel said. I thought it would be better if you were both here when we asked. What do you wish to know? Hermod asked, beginning to sound annoyed at the interruption to his day. We are very sorry to bother you, Hermod, said Daniel, but we wouldn't have come unless it was absolutely urgent. It's about Colonel O'Neill, said Willow. Hermod's expression shifted to surprise. Yes, O'Neill, said Hermod. He is one of the most respected names, for a human, among the Asgard. Is he unwell? Not exactly, said Willow, glancing at Daniel, who nodded for her to continue. Colonel O'Neill downloaded the entire ancient database into his brain again, which helped us defeat Anubis' attack on Earth. But now we need your help to remove it from his mind. I see, said Hermod. I am sorry about what has happened to Colonel O'Neill. However, to remove the knowledge from his mind, a special device is required, which, unfortunately, I do not possess. How is he at this moment? Thanks to the download, we found an outpost of the ancients in our southern pole, said Willow, and the Colonel used that knowledge to access a stasis pod. Interesting, said Hermod. I am surprised that humans are able to use the technology of the ancients. However, the stasis process should slow the degradation of his mind until a more suitable solution is found. Actually, said Daniel, that's why we're here. Is there any way for you to contact Thor? We've been trying to reach him for the past few months, but there's been no response. Supreme Commander Thor is currently on a mission for the Asgard High Council, said Hermod, but I will try to contact him directly. I can provide no guarantees, but as I said, I will try. That's all we ask, Hermod, said Willow. I hope you have more success in contacting him. I am sorry that I cannot help O'Neill directly, said Hermod. He is a legend among our people, and we all hope for his recovery. Thank you for your help, Hermod, said Daniel, as he and Willow turned and walked slowly back toward the Stargate. After returning to the SGC, there was another briefing with Dr. Weir. Willow and Daniel explained what they had learned from Hermod. Silence filled the briefing room. The low hum of the air conditioning and the distant voices from the control room one floor down were the only sounds. A few moments later, it was Carter who spoke. Leaning forward with her arms on the table, she said, We need to use the Teltec. I have an idea of where we need to go. Where? We are asked. Well, as you know, the Asgard homeworld Hala was where they used the time dilation device to trap the replicators, Carter said. Weir nodded. Carter continued, We're hoping that Thor might still be there, monitoring the situation. But it's just a guess. Weir reiterated. Carter nodded. It's our best guess. Weir leaned back. After a few seconds of thought, she nodded. Prepare everything you need. I'll talk to the president. Major Carter's lab, SGC, 3 hours later. Hey, Daniel said soon after receiving the call from Carter to meet her in her lab. From the sound of her voice, he could tell it was good news. Let me guess. Dr. Weir has given approval for us to use the Teltec? He nodded at both Willow and Teal'c, who had arrived a few minutes earlier. Not all of us, said Major Carter sheepishly. It's just Teal'c, Willow, and me going to Hala. But why? Asked Daniel. I need you here, Daniel, Carter replied. Because if we fail, you're the only one who can help the Colonel by finding another way. Damn, Daniel muttered, rubbing the back of his head. I was hoping I'd be going with you guys. Carter gave a sheepish expression before continuing. Okay, we're all here. Good. She turned to Daniel. There's something else, Daniel. Our journey there might fry the hyperdrive, and I don't think I'll be able to repair it without the Colonel's help. So, it's entirely possible that, unless we find Thor, this could be a one-way trip. A one-way trip, Willow asked. There's a small chance, Willow, said Carter, but I have a feeling Thor will be there. She knew it was a very risky move. Do you trust me? Yes, ma'am, Willow replied. All right, you and Teal'c should go gather supplies for the journey, Major Carter instructed. We leave in 6 hours. Yes, ma'am, Willow said before she and Teal'c headed to the supply room. Once Teal'c and Willow were gone, Carter and Daniel were alone in her lab. Sam, is it a good idea to take Willow with you? Daniel asked. Shouldn't be she kept safe here on Earth, especially if you're saying this might be a one-way trip? We can't protect her from everything, Daniel, said Major Carter. When she agreed to join the program, she understood that missions like this would be part of it. She continued, even Dr. Weir believes it's a good idea. In case of an emergency, we might have to land on a hostile planet, and her abilities could be extremely useful. You think Thor may have some idea why these new non-magical abilities manifested? Daniel said, not as a question, but as a statement. She doesn't believe it's magic, or that she's unconsciously using magic, Carter replied, nodding. It's important to understand where her abilities are coming from and their extent. Carter leaned forward, resting her palms on the desk. Hopefully, it will help with the device Willow and I are designing to nullify her abilities. I still don't think it's a good idea, Sam, Daniel sighed. Taking her with you, I mean. She's kind of like the Colonel, Carter chuckled. Carter chuckled. You saw she didn't flinch when I said this might be a one-way trip. I think she's exactly what we need on this mission. After some grumbling, Daniel grudgingly agreed that the Major was right. Come on, Daniel, Carter said with a smile. Let's help them inventory the supplies. On board Teltec, several minutes away from Hala. Willow was bored on the flight to Hala. Teal'c was piloting the spacecraft, and Major Carter seemed to be on her 30th inventory of the supplies and weapons they had brought. Willow sat leaning against the wall of the ship's cargo bay. At times, she would move to the passenger seat to look out the window at the hyperspace corridor. Willow, said Major Carter, are you hungry? We've got a lot of turkey sandwiches. Not at the moment, Major, said Willow with a smile. Thanks, though. The Major nodded, took her sandwich, and walked over to the passenger seat at the front of the craft to keep Teal'c company. Willow knew she had to do something to keep herself busy or she'd go nuts. So while sitting down, she began playing around with the storage cases. She mentally moved the boxes, stacking them into different configurations. She even took a sandwich out of one of the boxes, deconstructed it into separate components, and then ate one without using her hands. She opened another box containing weapons, picked up a shotgun, and gently pulled it toward her with her mind before setting it in her hands. She physically checked the weapon to make sure it was unloaded. Once she confirmed it was safe, she levitated it again and made it float in front of her eyes. Then she went to work disassembling the weapon telekinetically until all she saw floating before her was a debris field of screws, firing pins, springs, and barrels. She spun the pieces around before mentally reassembling them into a fully operational shotgun and lowering it back into her hands. Neat trick, Willow, said Major Carter, startling her. Sorry, Major, Willow exclaimed, grabbing her chest. I didn't see you there. Can you do that with any weapon? I guess so, Major, as long as I know how it works, replied Willow. How about you try with this? Said Carter as she unloaded her pistol and tossed it toward Willow. Willow caught the gun with her mind, rotating it along all its axes to the Major's impressed gaze. Show off, said Major Carter, smiling. You threw it, ma'am, said Willow with a grin. She then disassembled the entire pistol in midair, rotated the debris, and reassembled it, all while looking at the Major. Here you go, Major, she said, floating it back into Carter's waiting hands. That was impressive, Willow, said the Major. I'll ask Teal'c to get you schematics of the Jaffa staff weapons when we get back to Earth. Think you can do the same with those? I should be able to, Major, said Willow. And don't you mean if we get back? I mean, you did say this might be a one-way trip. I know we'll make it back, Willow, said Major Carter. Trust me, Thor is out there. Of course, ma'am, Willow smiled. Mind if I sit next to you? Asked the Major. Please, Willow replied. So, said Carter, settling beside her. How's things? Have you talked to your parents lately? I talked to them just before we left, said Willow. They're teaching at Cambridge for the next few months before moving on to Germany for a lecture tour. I told them I was being deployed to a far-off country, so they might not be able to reach me, which, technically speaking, is kinda true. Ha, said the Major, laughing. I've had to use the same excuse with my father before he became part of the Tok'ra. And I've had to do the same with Pete. She paused before Willow could interrupt. Your parents seem to be very busy people. Yeah, said Willow softly. Too busy. They really weren't around much when I was growing up. I see, said Major Carter, glancing down at the floor. I'd see them maybe 2 months a year, said Willow to the Major's surprise. So who looked after you? Well, until I was a freshman in high school, I stayed at home with a nanny they hired. Once I started high school, Our neighbor in Sunnydale, who was a family friend, would let me stay with them after school. But I was stubborn, so I would have dinner at my friend's house and then go next door to sleep in my parents' house. That must have been awful, said the major. I mean, not having your parents around. It was, said Willow. When I was younger, I was angry at them. I thought they hated me because they were never around. But as I got older, I realized what they were doing was for me, to give me a better future. And I guess they're still doing that. She glanced at Major Carter. Major, may I ask you a personal question? Sure, Willow. Well, Willow hesitated, nerves creeping in. Tell her about Pete. Screw any evidence. She deserves to know. Willow thought to herself. Willow? Said the Major. Do you trust me, ma'am? Asked Willow. Of course, replied Carter. I recently found that Willow never finished. Suddenly the entire ship shook violently. Willow Rosenberg, Major Carter, said Teal'c over the comm. We have arrived, and there seems to be a problem. To be concluded.